Greetings, my dear gaming enthusiasts. Are you ready to take your PC to new heights of performance with this tasty tech treat, the latest and greatest in GPU technology? Well, buckle up and hold on to your hats, because this upgrade is going to be a game changer. Today we're going to show you how to upgrade your gaming machine with the one, the only, the mighty NVIDIA 3090 RTX Founders Edition. This fantastical piece of hardware technology is sure to bring your game sing and dance like never ever before. So come along, won't ya? Let's get this delectable journey through the world of upgraded gaming.
Welcome to today's GPU upgrade adventure. For step one, we're going to start with research and planning. Before we start the upgrade process, it's important to do some research and plan out this project. First, you'll want to make sure that your PC is compatible with the new graphics card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check and make sure that my setup is all good to install the 3090 RTX Founders Edition. We're going to check the specifications of the motherboard, the power supply, and make sure we meet all the minimum requirements for the new graphic card. We'll also want to consider the size of our case, as well as the space for the graphics card. So I head over to the NVIDIA website, pull up their owner's manual, and look through some of the specifications. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to pull up the specifications on my motherboard, so that way I can compare the two and make sure that everything is compatible. So I'm just going to look and make sure that the PCI information looks good. So we need a PCI Express slot, and we need at least a 750 watt power supply. I do have a 750 watt power supply powering this system, so we should be good on that. I have enough physical space in the case, and I have enough space on my hard drive. I have more than 2 gigs of space on my hard drive to install the drivers, so we're good to go. So now that we have confirmed all of the hardware meets the necessary requirements, we can move on to step number 2. Now that we've verified everything meets proper specifications, the only tools that we're going to need for this project is going to be a Phillips head screwdriver. I will also need to get the RTX 3090 Founders Edition that I will be removing from a mining rig. I have my mining rig shut down right now. So what I'm gonna do is take the 3090 instead of just sitting in the mining rig and put it in the gaming, editing, streaming, everything PC. So we're gonna need that as part of our tools and materials. So now that we have everything we need, we can go ahead and proceed to the next step. Moving on to step 3, which is going to be to remove the old graphics card. Before we can install the new graphics card, we'll need to remove the old ones. First, we want to make sure that we shut down the PC. Then, what I like to do is I like to flip the power switch on the back of the power supply, and then unplug all of the cables from the back of the computer, including the power supply. We will have to access the side panel or open up the side panel of the PC, so unplugging all of the cables makes it a lot easier to be able to flip it onto its side to be able to open up the side panel. And you don't have to flip it on its side. That's just something that I prefer to do. It makes it a lot easier to install the graphic cards and remove the graphics cards while it's laying flat rather than upright. When it's upright, you're also fighting with gravity while you're trying to insert the cards and remove the cards. So I just prefer to lay it flat so I can use gravity as an aid rather than an enemy. Every case is different, but as you can see, my case is pretty simple. It only has 4 screws to remove the side panel to access the internal components. So now that we have the case open, we're gonna go ahead and get everything ready to be taken out. We're gonna disengage the locking mechanism, remove the power connectors, then we're gonna remove the screws, and then disengage the locking mechanism on the motherboard, on the PCIe slot. The screws that are holding in the GPUs are just a normal Phillips head computer screw. They're pretty common or pretty universal with most computer cases, and I do have 2 screws that are holding in each of the GPUs. So I do have 4 screws in total that need to be removed from these. Then we can move on to disengaging the locking mechanism on the motherboard. Now we are ready to remove the GPUs, disengage the locking mechanism on the motherboard, then give it a slight tug up. Once it unlocks and dislodges from the bar, we're going to move on. Once the GPUs are removed from the motherboard, we can move on to the installation in step 4. Step 4, it's time to install the NVIDIA RTX 3090 Founders Edition. First, make sure you handle the graphics card by its edges to avoid touching the components and connectors on the card. Then you want to align the graphics card with the PCI Express slot and gently insert it into the slot. Make sure that the card is fully seated in the slot and that the connectors are properly aligned. If your motherboard has a retention mechanism for the graphics card, make sure to engage it before securing the card with the screws. And similarly, if your case has a retention mechanism for the graphics card, make sure to engage it before closing the case. Then you want to finally secure the graphics card in place using the screws you removed earlier. It's important to note that if your motherboard has multiple PCI Express slots, you'll want to use the correct slot for the graphics card. This is usually the one closest to the CPU, but it's always a good idea to confirm the correct slot in your motherboard's user manual. With all these steps taken care of, we're ready to move on to the next step and connect the power cables and install the drivers. With step 5, we're going to connect the power cables. Most graphic cards will require a 6-pin or an 8-pin power connector from the power supply. You want to locate the appropriate connectors on the graphic card and on your power supply and connect them. Since I already had 2 graphic cards in here, I already have the secondary or the additional power line because the RTX 3090 does take 2 power inputs. If you need some help on how to run a second line from your power supply, refer to a couple of my other videos where I am working on this exact PC. I actually took out the power supply, flipped it over because it was installed upside down, and ran a new line. So that should help if you are having questions on running a new power connection line for a GPU, if you need a secondary or an additional line to power a GPU, or if you're installing a secondary GPU. So now we're going to close everything up, reconnect everything, and power it on. Okay. Now that the hardware is installed, it is time to power on the device and install the drivers. Upon boot up, the system is recognizing that a new GPU has been installed and it's updating the driver to the Microsoft Display Adapter driver. because I previously installed the NVIDIA drivers to my machine with my previous NVIDIA graphics card, I'm just going to go over to the GeForce Experience application and let the NVIDIA software install the correct driver for the RTX 3090. Now, when I go over to the GeForce, it does need to reinstall. This is most likely due to the auto-installed driver from Microsoft. So we'll let this install, and then once it finishes, then open up the application and use the update with the NVIDIA drivers. Here, I'm just following through the prompts to download the latest driver. Once it gets done downloading, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run an express installation. Also, something of note, it's good practice to restart the PC after this part gets done with installing the new drivers in order for them to take effect. And once this install finishes, what we're going to do is we're going to restart the PC, and then we will boot it back up and run it through a few tests, mainly just playing a game and just seeing how it performs, if it's able to play a game without crashing and producing graphical errors like little black spots, or where you can see pixels have been blacked out, or really just graphical errors on the screen that shouldn't be there. So now that we have the GPU installed, all the drivers are installed and up to date, what we're going to do is run it through a small stress test. So I am running my screen recording software, which is taking up a good amount of resources from the GPU, and what I'm also going to do is I'm going to boot up into Rocket League, which is somewhat of a demanding game on performance and graphics. So it'll give us a good stress test, especially with both softwares running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to boot up into Free Play and just kind of toggle the camera around and see if I can't get it to produce any graphical errors. It's not uncommon for GPUs that come out of mining rigs, due to them constantly heating up and running at higher temperatures at all hours without a break. It's not uncommon for them not to perform as well after coming out. So I'm just going to run it through a few stress tests and look for some graphical errors. And I do have this video sped up, and you can even notice when the video is sped up, there is a couple times that it freezes, which is not indicative of the GPU. It could also be more of a CPU issue, especially with both of these running. So I didn't see any black spots on the screen, so we will call this one a success.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful or entertaining, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. Until next time.